Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race NASCAR Cup Series at Dover Motor Speedway, the Monster Mile, IndyCar at Toronto, Exhibition Place, the Street Course. Alex Palou trying to complete history. 7 wins, trying to get to 10. I'm Joe Samaniego. With me, Matthew Bro from Grid Network TV and Tanner Smith, editor of the Pit Box Press. A big thank you to all our Patreon investors, as always. Colin Show, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew for investing into Grid Network each and every month through Patreon. Link in the video description to our Patreon page where you can invest in us. We also accept Buy Me a Coffee, YouTube Super Chat. We'll thank you on the air and put your name on the leaderboard, and follow us across social media at Grid Network TV and gridnetworktv.com for the latest articles from Matthew, as well as video clips from our YouTube channel. Subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs, and we thank everyone for tuning in. We know IndyCar qualifying, they're in round 2 with 4 minutes left to go, but NASCAR qualifying wrapped up not too long ago. The Monster Mile is back, and so does the hope for everyone to win, except Shane van Gisbergen. The Mile Oval will be a big test for Shane van Gisbergen this weekend to see how well that team performs and how he does on the track. And of course, right now, the 3rd seed in the playoffs because of the 2 consecutive wins plus the win in Mexico City. He'll love to stay up there, especially within the top 4 seeded positions. He is starting 6th in this race. He qualified 6th, but no practice lap, just a qualifying lap. Great effort by that team for qualifying. But Matt, I got to ask you, does the recent success and this qualifying result place additional pressure on that 88 team? And do you think starting 6th with no Cup experience at this track gives that team concerns as they proceed with this race weekend?
Yeah, 1-2, Joe. I don't think they even set a lap, right, at all. I think wasn't it just straight no practice, no qualifying? Wasn't it just timing? I missed it, to be honest with you. I'm not gonna lie, I was at Wendy's. But even so, besides that point, right? Does this place put pressure on Shane van Gisbergen? I don't think so. I think he's just chilling, honestly. I think he's got his feet up, chilling in the chair because he's got 3 wins. He's doing what they pretty much pay him to do, is win road course races. He's done 3 out of the 4 so far. And Dover, granted, yeah, I mean, it's a harder track. I think what's interesting about it is the fans might not like it that much, but it gives the drivers a real challenge. And I want to reference one driver from the ARCA race yesterday, just listening kind of like a thorough answer about what we see is it was Isaac Kitzmiller who finished 4th in his debut. He mentioned in a post-race interview that it was his first time ever at the track. He's a 16-year-old kid making his ARCA debut. And he said, this place is all about throttle control, and it's a lot more difficult for people who've never been there before. It's all about the fastest guy is the one who is the best on the throttle. So for someone like Shane van Gisbergen, who is a lot more experienced than Kitzmiller is, obviously, I don't think it's going to really affect him too much. But I do think starting 6th with no experience in a Cup car here, not really the easiest thing for that Trackhouse team to do. However, I think he's got great teammates around here. I'm pretty sure Suarez has won Xfinity here before. Chastain's come pretty dang close to winning here before. So I think he's got enough support. He'll figure it out. I mean, it's Shane van Gisbergen, right? So I don't think there's really any pressure on him to go out there. And I hate these Facebook comments, guys. I read too much into it. They're like, well, let's not say SVG's good until he wins on an oval. Who gives a damn if he wins on an oval? What other rookie are we saying, oh, he has 3 victories? They all just so happen to be on the same type of course. It's like, why are we giving him crap? He's still technically a rookie at the Cup level. So I just don't get it. Nobody's saying anything about Riley Herbst not winning at all. So it's just one of those things, right? But, yeah, I don't think there's really any additional pressure for this team. I think they're going to be chilling. Maybe it's one of those things where if there's not a lot of passing, which there not tends to be in the next-gen era at types of tracks like this, if he can somehow get stage points, I don't know if he will. He doesn't have a lot this year besides on the road courses. So I think they're just going to play it by ear, whether it's Sunday, whether it's Monday, depending on rain, obviously. If you want rain in your area, schedule a NASCAR race. That's all I got.
Yeah, so for me, while I don't think that SVG should have like any pressure on him at this point. I mean, he's tied for the league lead in wins with 3, with Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, and Kyle Larson, who all stand to be contenders in this race just by virtue of how good that they are on ovals. But at the same time, I'm sure SVG, with the great starting position at a track where track position does matter a good bit, I do feel like he'll have some pressure, like from himself, like internally, he'll want to try to stay up there and maybe get some stage points. But at the end of the day, I don't foresee that 88 team really contending. I know that, Jimmy Johnson obviously came here and swept this race as a rookie when Dover had 2 dates, but I don't foresee that happening with this 88 crew this weekend. I think, again, lead lap finish on maybe in the top 20. That would be a really good goal to shoot for, especially at a track like Dover that tends to take young drivers or inexperienced drivers on ovals and kind of chew them up and spit them out, much like the Monster, Miles the Monster, seems to do with cars on the trophies. So, I would definitely recommend the 88 team not try to glean too much out of this weekend in terms of results. But I think that if certain things go right for them, oh, wow, I just started literally pouring rain outside my window for literally like out of nowhere. But anyway, not to be a weather reporter here, we're talking about NASCAR. And as for SVG this weekend, I don't think he should have any pressure on him going into this weekend, even if he has a good starting spot by virtue of the qualifying session getting rained out. But I also think that he might internally put some pressure on himself to eke out a good result at a track that he doesn't have a whole lot of reps at.
Well, we do know weather is in the forecast for tomorrow, but it is slim, looking at less than 25% chance of rain at Dover. So hopefully we don't have to play meteorologist tomorrow when it comes to weather. In the chat room, Denver, SVG is in preseason mode when it comes to the oval until round 1 of the playoff. Round 1, the playoff, I think that's going to be really big test. If he steals some stage points until playoffs, that's a bonus for SVG. The stage points, especially stage wins, where you get those playoff points and they keep accumulating up until the last race, I think that's going to be very key for Shane van Gisbergen. And I think for this race, I'm honestly on the fence. Do you start up 6th place, see what happens, log laps, or do you just go in the back and just try to log laps, gain the experience? Because if you do that and you realize you don't have a good car, you're going to go a lap down and you might be at the mercy of the monster claiming others to pick up positions. Where if you're in 6th place, a green racetrack, we haven't had one in a long time, but I'm wondering if NASCAR will consider a competition caution tomorrow after, say, 20 to 25 laps to see how the tire wear is going. Do you think we'll be seeing a potential ruling about a competition caution tomorrow, Matt?
I wouldn't say competition caution, but yeah, you're right. They are debuting a new type of tire too, and there's obviously 0 laps on it. So I think that's going to be even more fun than what we are going to experience if it wasn't that, obviously. But in terms of Shane van Gisbergen, I think that's kind of, if you make him drop to the back, I think that'd be silly on Trackhouse's part. That'd kind of be like making someone like Kyle Busch run full-time trucks. It's like, why? Or you got to keep him, I guess that's not the best analogy. Why wouldn't you race against the best? Why are you going to take the easy way out and start in the back? And then probably if he performs anything like he did at Bristol last year, he's going to go multiple laps down, and there'd be no chance at all. So if he stays up in 6th and he wrecks the field, But he was not going to do that. And I hope this isn't on Old Takes Exposed after I say that. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm really excited about that tire question, too, as well as what's going to happen. So we'll see. And I don't know if you guys saw the Joe Gibbs, not to change the subject, they posted the cost, which I know we'll talk about the cost and money with specific teams coming up, 2 to be exact. But they mentioned that each set of tires, they get 10 per team. And it's like $22,000 for 10 sets of tires, not including like the wheel as well. So it's I just think that's interesting, the cost of stuff. That's all I'm going to say for that. But I definitely want to hear what Tanner has to say about competition costs, and I'm interested.
I mean, it rained today. They haven't had any laps on the track. That seems like a reasonable thing for them to do.
I agree. I think it'll be the best course of action. In the chat room, we have Adam who's joining us. SVG can come away with a top 15, 20 finish at Dover. That will be a win for the team. I think that would be a huge result of top 15, top 20 for SVG. It's just one of those deals. I think a lot on the line, and I have to sort of agree with you. It would be a bit of a odd move to say, hey, we almost don't have confidence just starting the back. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out tomorrow. And when it comes to this race, you got to look at the favorites. Of course, SVG, not exactly an oval favorite, but when it comes to the average starting position, top 10 all-time, including the retired drivers, Kyle Larson is the only driver on that list. But when it comes to active drivers, of course, Kyle Larson leads Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, and Ryan Blaney in the top 5. But when it comes to wins, Kyle Busch among active drivers, 3 wins. Hamlin, Elliott, 2 wins each. Everyone else at single digit, 1 win. The last 4 winners of this race include Alex Bowman, 2021, Chase Elliott, 2022, Martin Truex Jr., and Denny Hamlin last year. Last time Kyle Larson won here, 2019. William Byron has not won here yet. A little bit of a slide for him. Chase Elliott is on the pole, so that's a good thing for Hendrick Motorsports. But Ty Gibbs, Chase Briscoe with Joe Gibbs Racing, they don't have wins here yet. So Tanner, which team do you believe is more likely to have a driver in victory lane? Are we looking at Hendrick Motorsports or Joe Gibbs Racing?
Joe Gibbs Racing all the way. No offense to Hendrick Motorsports, but I would say as of recent, I haven't been particularly impressed by their overall pace with all 4 cars, which I know does sound rather interesting to say after they put, I believe, 4 cars in the top 10 for qualifying last week. I could be wrong about that, but all their cars didn't end up finishing in the top 10 now, did they? With all that said, though, I think that JGR and all 4 of their drivers have shown some manner of competitiveness at this track. Ty Gibbs obviously has shown a lot of pace here in his short Cup Series career. I'm sure if we were still going here twice a year, he might have picked up a win by now, but that's neither here nor there. Obviously, Denny Hamlin is amazing at this track. Christopher Bell, while I don't believe he's won here yet, he does have the dirt racing background that does lend to some of the principles of like finding the right groove for your car at Dover, which is very high banked, very old surface. So, you kind of have to search a little bit more than you do at somewhere like Martinsville, for instance. And you have Chase Briscoe, who I can't quite remember, but I feel like he won an Xfinity race here, but I could be wrong about that. Either way, I know that he showed some pace here at some point or another with SHR in the Cup Series, and I just have a feeling that with the recent trends that the 19 team have been showing a lot more pace since their Pocono victory, you got to believe that they'll at least be contending for a top 10 at minimum, and if strategy breaks their way, they'll have a really good chance. But I know that with Hendrick Motorsports having 3 former winners at this track, that, on paper, it seems like they should have the better ability to go out and win this race. But since they haven't won here in the next gen era since Chase Elliott's win in the first season, I can't really say that I have them above JGR on this, considering they've won the last 2.
I love that answer, and mainly because I'm going to actually take the opposition on this. Usually Tanner and I agree on a lot of things, and I think he makes a lot of great points there with Gibbs, and I agree with everything he said. However, with Hendrick Motorsports, it's more, I guess, if you base it a little on luck too. Joe Gibbs Racing, besides Denny Hamlin, and then if you go, maybe if this was 2022, when they had Martin Truex Jr., when they had Kyle Busch on the team and Denny Hamlin, then maybe I would say them. But looking at it Ty Gibbs has been decent here. I know he doesn't, like Tanner said, if there were more dates here, he'd probably have an even better chance of getting a win. But Chase Briscoe's had no luck here. Christopher Bell, this has been one of his worst tracks in the next gen era just because he gets caught up in other messes. But when you look at Hendrick Motorsports, Chase Elliott in the next gen era, he's obviously got a win. His average finish is 5.7. Larson, although he hasn't won at Dover since Chip Ganassi days, Larson is one of the best here in general, just on concrete or asphalt and concrete tracks. Larson just is really good, obviously. Surprisingly, Byron hasn't won here, and Byron's probably, which is weird to say, the worst Hendrick Motorsports driver at this track. Because Alex Bowman's obviously gotten a win here, and he's finished 5th and 8th in his 2 appearances in the next-gen era here. That's pretty good for Bowman. So I honestly think Alex Bowman's going to be a sleeper pick for the Dover race. I really do. But, yeah, I think you're more likely to have Hendrick Motorsports. I know they've been on a little bit of a downslope. Specifically, William Byron, besides last week, has really just not been doing that well. Just writing the stories for GridNetworkTV.com and looking at the grid ranking and just watching Byron slowly fall down because he just keeps finishing just terrible. And then you watch the rise of like Chase Elliott as well and Kyle Larson. So it's going to be interesting. I think if you asked me this question 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago as well, I would say Joe Gibbs. But I think just the way Hendrick Motorsports is almost due for another victory, besides the Chase Elliott Atlanta victory, obviously. But I think someone like Chase Elliott starting on the pool was very lucky with the metric, the way that worked out. Alex Bowman, I think, is going to have a great day. I think he's due for another one. But I think Denny Hamlin's probably going to win if it's any of the 8 drivers on these teams. But I wouldn't shock me at all if Hendrick Motorsports has the lower average finish of the 2 teams.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I think I have to give Gibbs the upper hand. I mean, you got to look at Chase Elliott up front. Hendrick Motorsports are always good, but I just think there's just something special about Bell, Denny Hamlin. They're going to be contender. I'm really curious to see how Chase Briscoe and that 19 team, they know how to win here. They did 2 years ago with Truex.
On a green racetrack. Let's not forget.
Green racetrack, a lot of potential. Ty Gibbs, I think that's going to be the wild card along with William Byron from their respective teams. Now, when I was talking earlier about the top drivers with the best average starting position, one name I mentioned was Ryan Blaney. Let's talk about Team Penske. Ryan Blaney, overall, his season, he got to win, but a lot of bad luck or just no luck. Logano, his teammate, has yet to win here. Plenty of success in the Xfinity Series, 4 wins in a row at one point, but just hasn't done it yet in the Cup Series. Austin Cindric, same deal. 1 win in the Xfinity Series here. Got 1 win this year. So all 3 Penske cars locked into playoffs. Plus you throw in the 21, the Wood Brothers, which is essentially another Penske team. Josh Berry. His last top 10 finish was in Kansas. So just a streak of a top 15 finish or lower than, I believe, outside the top 20. Just been really inconsistent. And overall, we talked a lot about Hendrick Motorsports, Gibbs being the 2 favorites. Matt, do you believe Team Penske drivers will be contending for the win at all this weekend?
Only Blaney, to be honest with you, and I think that's just because Blaney is one of those drivers that can contend for a win at least 30 of the 36 races, probably 35 or 36 of the 36. But yeah, it's actually quite surprising looking at Penske's track record, specifically in the next gen era at Dover. Just they're not hitting on anything. Blaney's been pretty good here, but Logano's been kind of irrelevant here. Cindric's just been quite irrelevant here as well. And Barry just ever since his win that he kind of got because of strategy and sense, he's been really irrelevant. I don't think we would be talking about Cindric or Barry at all if they didn't win this season, just because they're 20th and 21st in points. Sure, they're ahead of someone like SVG, but at the same time, their teammates have just been doing significantly better than them week in and week out. So I really don't think the Penske group, and when I say the Penske group, I include Barry as well, just because of the technical alliance with the Wood Brothers. But besides Ryan Blaney, I truly don't think they're really going to contend. And then we're going to see what happened at Dover with Hendrick, and was it 21 where they were 1, 2, 3, 4? That's probably going to happen with Penske now that I don't shut up. So that's my luck, honestly. But yeah, I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. But I really don't think, besides Blaney, that Penske's even going to be in the conversation on whether it's Sunday or Monday, depending on the rain.
I actually disagree. So Josh Berry is in a really decent starting spot at 14th. This kind of track does kind of lend to his skill set to some extent, with it being an older track surface, which definitely leans closer to his like late model roots, where you kind of have to manage your equipment, manage your tires, and make sure that you are going 70% the entire run so you can actually go 70% at the end of the run. Whereas, some guys will go 100% and then they got to go 60, 50, 40, 30 towards the end of the run. And then finally they're just out of tire. As for Ryan Blaney, he has passed the most cars this year of anybody. And probably by quite a margin, if I had to take a guess. He and Jonathan Hassler bring a hot rod to the Speedway every week. And granted, they're going to be starting 31st tomorrow. Not exactly an enviable position for most people, but I think if any team can rise from 31st to the top 5, I would put my money on the 12 team at really any track. I mean, even at the Chicago Street Course a couple weeks ago, Ryan Blaney with 10 laps to go was a lap down and in 30th place and rebounded to finish 12th because of a free pass towards the end and some fresher tires and some unfortunate circumstances that happened to people in front of him. But at the end of the day, I think the 12 team's probably the only real formidable threat, to Matthew's point. But I wouldn't say Josh Berry is completely out of it. He had a lot of success here when he was with Junior Motorsports. I don't believe he ended up coming away with a victory, but it wouldn't surprise me given the fact that he's going to be reading off of Ryan Blaney's data and, to a much lesser extent, Logano and Hendrick's. I think that he'll be able to parlay that into a relatively solid result. I would project he finishes somewhere around 12th to 8th for Josh Berry, but Ryan Blaney, I expect him to get a top 5 and probably some stage points. I think that he and Jonathan Hassler know how to make passes in this series, even at the harshest tracks of, where dirty air is the most impactful, and I think somewhere like Dover lends into his skill set a ton. So, I don't really have a whole lot of an outlook for Hendrick and Logano, especially Hendrick, who's buried in the field. I mean, if they get a top 15 and some stage points on strategy or something, that'd be a win for that team. But for the 22 team, God, I feel like they've just been lost for much of the last 2 months since they won in Texas. Obviously, they had a relatively strong run at Nashville that went extremely overlooked. He ended up running top 5 practically the whole race, but his teammate put it on the table and absolutely wiped the floor with the competition that night, and that kind of became the dominant story. But at the end of the day, Team Penske should have a solid showing here based on the caliber of drivers that they have and what their skill sets are, but I only see Berry and Blaney really popping out of those 4.
Yeah, I think this is a track where Blaney could be a contender. Now, Joe Logano's 600 start, it would be really nice to see if he could get some good luck, good fortune, contend for a win. But I don't know. I just sometimes feel that team seems to be a little bit one step behind, or just really don't have the good luck, wrong place, wrong time. Austin Cindric, we'll see what happens. But very interesting point about Josh Berry and the 21 team. Now, one of the big keys, of course, we talked a lot about essentially the big 3 across each manufacturer, so Toyota, Ford, Chevrolet. Let's talk about the other Toyota team that's been in the news a lot, and we'll throw in their front row motorsport as well, too. 2311, Denny Hamlin. He is starting 13th. His drivers are starting 4th, 22nd, and 32nd, respectively. Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace, and Riley Herbst. They are all open cars. We only have 37 entries, so no concerns about qualifying and being bumped, unable to make it. But this was a big blow to 2311 and Front Row Motorsports this week with the paperwork to race as open teams submitted taking place. Front Row, very similar situation with 2311 in that lawsuit. Essentially, judges, courts not ruling in their favor. But in the media press conference, Denny Hamlin said December 1st, everything will be exposed. We've heard a lot of the discussion already just from all the litigation so far and the injunctions through the court records, but there's still the discovery. There's still potentially a trial. Tanner, thoughts on 2311 front row situation and Denny's message about the 1st of December?
Yeah, I got plenty of thoughts about this, Joe. So, I think that if we're trying to figure out if 2311 and front row are in any sort of trouble, I would say financially, probably a little bit. I actually don't know much about Bob Jenkins and his ability to pay out for all of this, given that he is what I believe only a franchisee for several restaurant chains, but I do worry a little bit about that team's financial solvency going forward. But I think at the end of the day, 2311, they're going to be fine. As for the merits of what Denny Hamlin's saying and just kind of general thoughts on what's been happening in the court cases as of recent, yeah, I don't really understand why the teams filed another injunction, considering the fact that the problem is that they don't have any irreparable harm to show to earn the preliminary injunction. Whether that be the first one or the last one, that has been the entire contention in all of this. But one thing that keeps getting brought up by every single judge or appeals panel that they have met with is those judges saying, you definitely look like you have a case here, but as far as the preliminary injunction is concerned, you don't really have much basis to stand on because irreparable harm hasn't actually happened. You're just saying theoretically it's going to happen. Now, obviously racing even one race weekend completely uncharted, going to be a big hit to the wallet. Michael Jordan, he's got deep pockets, got a deep wallet, I'm sure. Not going to be a problem for them. Front row, a little bit worried for them considering they're now a three-car team. So as far as what Denny Hamlin was saying this morning in his driver availability, I would have to imagine they've definitely hit on something in discovery that makes them rather confident. And if you know anything about Jeffrey Kessler and what his track record is and what he has been able to accomplish in his very storied career as an attorney, you would definitely find that if he is saying that this case is a layup, then it's probably a breakaway and the entire 9 other players on the court are standing under the basket on the other end of the floor, and he's just sitting there under the other basket just tapping it in. This man has taken on the NFL, the NBA, and the NCAA, and he has won all 3 times. Now, granted, he did not win in the Tom Brady court case, but that was less of an antitrust case than it was a probe on a particular player that Kessler was hired on to help defend and wasn't really able to do so. But as far as when he has to take on large entities, Jeffrey Kessler is practically undefeated. And in fact, in the Supreme Court cases to establish name, image, and likeness for NCAA athletes, they won in the Supreme Court 9-0 unanimously. Do you know how difficult that is in an extremely partisan world that we live in right now in politics, especially on the bench of the Supreme Court? 9-0. So, with all that laid out, I know that was quite a bit to digest for everybody, but with all of that laid out, to me, I wouldn't be worried at all if I was 2311. They probably do have a very solid court case on their hands, and I do think that NASCAR knew that 2311 and front row had a valid antitrust lawsuit against them on the table. They just didn't think that they would ever file it. But I do think that Jim France, in his inimitable wisdom, decided to add that clause to own teams for the France family into the charter agreement. So that way, if the France family had their power from the sport ripped away, which could very well happen in this court case, and you only see, New York Times journalists talk about how, Tyler Reddick may go to another race team because there's a clause in his contract. You only see people in the mainstream media talking about that rather than what actually happens to the sport if the France family lose this case, which is very, very possible. So with all that in mind, I think that if 2311, just keeps kicking their feet up like they are and, keeps their head down and keeps moving forward, I think they'll be just fine. I mean, it seems like Jeffrey Kessler has run into something in Discovery that is of particular interest and will be of particular interest to the court. And I think that they are on the path to victory, but these, momentary L's, much like when the Confederacy started moving north in the Civil War and got to Gettysburg, this might be a place where NASCAR is winning a little bit, getting a little ahead of themselves, and they're probably about to get stamped down by the opposition. So for people that are not on the team's side, I think that if you're Team NASCAR on all this, I think you're going to have some very, very, very interesting conversations with yourself come December 1st, because I think we're going to find out a lot about the France family that's not going to be very flattering.
Yeah, you got to clip that. That was a hell of an answer right there. I think if you guys are watching this not live, go back and listen to every word that Tanner just said. I think if you hit it right on the head, like that was truly, and you're not supposed to pray, but like that, it was a great answer. And I think Tanner made 100 valid points in that sense. I'll take a little bit of a different perspective in that sense, kind of based off where he left off in that, where about the fans. I honestly think I agree with Tanner. If you're Team NASCAR here, and I mean, Grant, we love the sport, I think you have an implicit bias, whether it's against 2311, whether it's against Denny Hamlin, whether it's against Bubba Wallace, Michael Jordan. It's going to hurt NASCAR a lot more if they win this case. And I'm not going to compare it to the Confederacy and stuff like that, but Tanner was right. He really was right in the sense where NASCAR's winning a lot of battles and everything going on makes perfect sense. 2311 and Front Row Motorsports cannot prove stuff is going wrong on their end right now. But now I think them losing the charter is going to help their case a lot. They're going to be losing millions of dollars. With the way it's set up, the way NASCAR has set it up, where the tracks earn the money, where they earn the money with these charter entries, they laid this out for 2311 on Front Row to be like, look at the significant difference. Here you go. And then on December 1st, Denny Hamlin, Jeffrey Kessler, they're all going to walk in and say, look how much money we lost the way this market system works, and that's why we did this. And then I think that's going to close the case. So it's stuff in life, right? It gets harder before it gets better. That's really what this is going to be. I think 2311 is going to lose a lot of money. I think Front Row might be in a worse position. They're going to lose a lot of money. But if you lose Michael Jordan from the sport, you lose arguably the best driver of all time without a championship from the ownership role, Denny Hamlin. You lose him from being an owner. It's going to hurt NASCAR a lot more. And I think they discovered something, like Tanner said. I think they're waiting for December 1st to come. They're willing to lose the money now because come December 1st, I think it's going to be a whole different discussion. And, yeah, Tyler Reddick, no offense to him, you think he's one of the best drivers in the sport. I know it's in his contract, but where is he going? All his sponsors have always been team sponsors, I think, especially since he made it the Cup. Knows how all Kyle Busch's sponsors in 2022 or 2023 were all Tyler Reddick sponsors the year before. And then when he came to 2311, they were either Kurt Busch or Bubba Wallace's sponsors. And that's obviously besides the whole music thing I'm not going to get into with Tyler Reddick's family and stuff like that. But it's just, I don't think Reddick's going to go anywhere because I truly believe he knows how this is going to end up. So, that's kind of my thoughts on it. I think 2311 might be they might show that they're worried, but I think they're showing a hand that they want people to believe. Now, if they went and Corey Heim left and Tyler Reddick left and Riley Herbst took all his monster money elsewhere, then they might be a little concerned. Front row, I think they got their guys locked down, at least for the time being. I know Gregson might be a free agent too. And no offense to Gregson, he's back in the points. I don't know if that's irreparable harm they can show if he decides to leave. But, yeah, that's kind of my thought. I think Tanner hit it really the nail on the head there with his answer about it. And I truly do believe if you want NASCAR to win this case, I think you have an implicit bias that you're not willing to say out loud, whether it's against 2311 front row, Jordan, Hamlin, Bubba, Reddick, Herbst, all those guys. That's kind of my thoughts on it. But we're going to see what happens. But for now, they are going to lose money. And if you notice, they want a little more of a larger slice of the pie. And even if you saw like Joe Gibbs' post that I mentioned, the 2311, that's like almost $70,000 in tires per race. That's even less than how much they're going to be losing by running open entries. And granted, if there had 41 cars here and something happened like Chicago where Bubba couldn't get a qualifying lap in and would have missed the race, then they can file that injunction and be like, look how much money we just lost there. But Tanner was right, too, in the sense where every injunction they lose, it makes perfect sense. But when it comes December, I think we're all ready to see what happens.
December 1st is going to be a big day. We're going to be following, of course, all the news as everything all takes more and more shape with this court case. And, of course, December 1st, that is a Monday. So, of course, any major breaking news, subscribe to the Grid Network. And, of course, right here as well, too, Grid Tonight, reporting on any news, big or small, throughout the offseason. Let's go into the chat room. A couple of comments. I know we had earlier, we talked about SVG. You should start SVG on P6 and let him lose, see what he can do. I think that was something we sort of all agreed upon, especially with a potential competition caution. No offense, I'm so over the NASCAR 2311 front row racing lawsuit. Next charter agreement comes either make NASCAR full to the teams or split like IndyCar in the 90s to prove a point. Oh, man. I feel whereas with IndyCar and that split, there was only one track that really had a lot of power, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Everybody else was independently owned. Here, NASCAR owns a bunch of the tracks. SMI owns the other half of the tracks. I think it's a little bit of a different landscape, and I don't think it's going to be as simple as that. And then we also have Adam. What's your take on the Chicago street race gone for 2026 and potentially Chicago Speedway could return? Well, let's talk about that. I know we have the big news that came out yesterday that Chicago is not coming back for 2026. Essentially, it will be one of those tracks where hopefully we'll see it again in 2027. We heard reports after the last street race that maybe city leaders were starting to realize, hey, this has been a really big success. Let's see if we can make it work, but potentially a different date. Now, knowing the NASCAR schedule is not as easy as moving a 4th of July race weekend to any other race weekend and making a swap. But overall, we've seen essentially one of the big things is with this race, a lot of potential success for street course races and NASCAR Cup Series. Now, reports claim NASCAR will confirm San Diego to be on the track list for 2026 in another street course, but we know Mexico City is looking uncertain, and maybe Montreal's in the picture for 2026. Tanner, your thoughts on the Chicago street course going away in 2026?
In some ways, it's a shame because I feel that the Grant Park Street Circuit put on an extremely great NASCAR product. I felt that when the layout was first revealed, I wasn't exactly thrilled with it, given how many 90-degree corners there were. But ultimately, I feel like the Chicago street course, despite it having so many similar turns, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Despite it having so many similar turns, I do feel that the Chicago street course still allowed for great racing throughout the field and up at the front. I still like vividly remember the battle between Bowman and Joey Hand last year. As the sun started to set, I felt that was really compelling. Not only that, you had all of the Xfinity races there were absolute bangers that came down to the very end. So nothing to complain about there. And downtown Chicago, like right outside of Soldier Field, right outside of the Shed Aquarium, right in front of Congress Plaza Hotel, like that is absolutely where you want to be if you're going to be doing a street race in one of the major markets around this country. At the same time, though, July 4th weekend in Chicago was already a big to-do, from what I understand from knowing people that live there. And I felt that taking that date from Road America to begin with was in itself kind of like a foul ball on NASCAR's part. I do think that first year, though, they definitely were able to kind of make the whole process to build and tear down the track a lot more efficient over those 3 years. But at the end of the day, you're disrupting one of the biggest attractions in the city in Grant Park by having this race here, and you're shutting down Michigan Avenue, and you're shutting down some of the other main streets that go through there. Through their downtown, and it just makes everything a lot more complicated on a weekend that's already got a lot of complications attached to it naturally. So I felt that while it is a bit of a shame that this really good track for NASCAR is not going to be on next year's schedule, I have a lot more optimism that we'll be able to come back when the time and the date are right. I feel that if we can just move this to the beginning of June, maybe the middle of July instead, right after July 4th, you might have a little bit more. You might have a little bit more buy-in from folks within the city, but I think that you can't do it at the beginning of August because Lollapalooza is around that time, so that's definitely not going to work. And as much as it'd be cool to have another road course or just a road course to replace the Roval to give the Roval back to the Oval at Charlotte, while I do think it'd be cool to have a road course in the playoffs that isn't the Roval, I don't think the Chicago Street Course should be taking that spot by any stretch. I also don't think it's a great strategy just long term to stay in one city for too long to do the street event. So I don't know what NASCAR's plan is going forward for street racing. It seems like obviously San Diego's got a really big chance to be the very next one, with Philadelphia and Coronado, Colorado being, kind of brought up by Sports Business Journal's Adam Stern in recent weeks. But I think the future is bright for racing with NASCAR in Chicago, whether it be at the street circuit or whether it be at the 1.5 mile intermediate, which ultimately is a good thing no matter what. But if we don't see the Chicago Street Course again, I do think it'd be a bit of a shame. It was a fantastic little racetrack, and I think it put on really, really good racing for NASCAR, and it's a shame that we only got one of those races to go through completely clean to the end of its scheduled distance without any, weather getting involved in the weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to do a lot of referring to former shows where we've talked about this stuff. One is, I've always said I love Chicago Street Course. I think it was one of the best. I think SVG dominating every single time doesn't help the case. I think there was probably a driving factor, maybe subconsciously, in the sense where it's like, well, we don't want the same guy to keep winning. Let's switch it up. Then he's going to go to San Diego and probably do the same thing. So hats off to him, right? But I said, I want you guys, if you're on YouTube or go to YouTube, check out, Ben and I talked about possible locations for a street course. I mentioned the Las Vegas, what F1 does on a completely, half the course, only a 1.8 mile. So you can still get your out west audience in that sense, but also make it logistically smart and maybe do Las Vegas Motor Speedway next week. I think NASCAR's main issue with their sport in general and just with like all these courts, I think they have almost too many great options to go to, but yet since they own half the stuff, they continue to go back to the same ones that might not be as great, which makes sense if you own it, right? But for Chicago, and we mentioned Mexico City's probably out of the picture again. At the end of the day, it's all the logistics about it. And I don't think one thing I think NASCAR does a poor job of, in my personal opinion, is the way they schedule stuff out. There was no reason why they needed to go from Michigan to Mexico City up to Pocono. It just didn't make any sense at all. And that's what I think if they actually took some more time and scheduled it. The thing is, there's 38 moving pieces, right? There's 38 dates if you include the All-Star and Clash and stuff, even more, probably like 40, where everything has to line up perfectly. So, granted, that's a very hard job. I wouldn't want to do that either. But that's the main reason why we lose stuff like this, like Chicago, like possibly Mexico City, maybe like the Road America, is just the logistics of it and when the dates fall. So I think if they could get Mexico City in a couple of years, maybe around Easter, during the Easter break, kind of like give them an extra week to get back to the USA and stuff like that, that might make sense. Chicago, putting it in that city in a busy time makes more financial sense for NASCAR, but logistical sense for everything else surrounding it, it doesn't really make sense. So I'm sad. I've said also on the shows previously with Chicagoland. I love Chicagoland. I miss it so much. However, it does hurt to see it replace the Chicago street course. And I don't mind the Roval either. I'm pro road course in that sense, but the Roval is just something I don't think they should go back to Charlotte. The Oval, not the Roval, for at least 2 times a year. That's one of the few tracks I think deserves it, honestly. But maybe, hey, throw Watkins Glen back in the playoffs. At least have one road course in the playoffs. Because although I just kicked NASCAR down at the knees, I'm going to bring them up in the sense where one thing I think they do better than anyone else is the way they balance. They have 5-6 road courses. They have 6 short tracks, 6 super speedway type races. I think they do a perfect balance of everything, but it's just the logistics and the location of when these events occur doesn't make any sense at all, and that's why we crap on them for it. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. I'm happy. I hope they could figure out Chicagoland, and we're not going to talk about Kentucky because Tanner and I could be here forever about another intermediate coming back. But yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts on that one.
Well, Marcus Smith did talk about Kentucky this week when he was on Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour podcast as the guest this week. He did say that, and I don't know if this was a compliment or a detriment, but he said that Kentucky Speedway has the same chance of coming back as North Wilkesboro once did. And I'm like, so you're saying like 0.6% instead of 6%, which is to say that no one thought North Wilkesboro was coming back until they got that massive grant money from the United States government to the state government in North Carolina to give to Marcus Smith and the racetracks to help boost the tourism back in the state of North Carolina. So, like, unless Kentucky gets some sort of massive grant from the government to fix it up, I highly doubt that they're going to bring a race back there. So I'm like, Marcus Smith, like, what exactly are we saying here? Can we just be a little bit more clear?
Yeah. Once a track goes dormant and starts decaying, it is an effort to get a track back. I mean, we've seen some of the pictures of Chicago, not as bad as all as Wilkesboro, but still it's going to take work. I can imagine the same for Kentucky as well.
Yeah, $4 million. I saw it quoted in Sports Business Journal that it will take to get Chicagoland back up to standard before going back to race there. But, I mean, all things considered, that's really not that bad.
Yeah, it's not that bad, but still pricey price tag. San Diego is going to be another great street race for SVG. It's going to sweep with a broom multiple times over and over. Let's see how the layout turns out. What about Cleveland Airport track that the IndyCar used to run? That was a very fun track. That was a very popular track. I would love to see that, especially to see the Cleveland area have a major motorsport event. Because overall, that was always a fun treat to see the cars go so wide, 3, 4, 5 wide Indy cars. Can't imagine what the NASCAR Cup Series route would do, but that first corner would be something else. I can only imagine tempers flaring and cars going around, and maybe a case of multiple overtimes as well too. Of course, it's going to be just a lot to see what happens. And it's going to be a lot to see what happens this race weekend at the Monster Mile, which Dover Motor Speedway, it had earned that nickname, the Monster Mile. It had been notoriously difficult. I still can't believe we used to run 500 miles here. The 400-mile races are a lot. It was pavement. Then they switched to concrete. We still saw some big wrecks, including 1995, that massive wreck at the end of lap one that took out multiple cars. One of the big things, though, with the big crashes, including that back straightaway where we've seen some big pileups, the most cautions we've seen here was 15 in 2017. 2022, we have 13 cautions. But since 2020, really only that 2022 race has sort of had more than 10 cautions. Last year we had 5 cautions, the year before 7 cautions, and of course you counted the 2 stage cautions as well with each race. Now, this track, we have seen a reduction of seating capacity, but honestly every track has since the 2000s when it was booming. This track has almost always been on cable television, even before 2001 when TNN traditionally had this race covered. They were independently owned, now SMI owns it. And since then, Dover has been brought down to 1 race date annually for the Cup Series. Overall, Matt, where do you rank Dover among the other NASCAR tracks?
Ooh, Joe, I might take some flack for this one. I think Dover has become in the next gen era more of a bottom tier, and I mean don't take it out of me. I think we've seen great races, not at the Cup level. I feel I don't even want to talk about ARCA. I know Ben and Brandon will talk about that in the next coming days, but Dover's just it hasn't performed at all. It in terms of not only the track but even viewership has just been down near the bottom of NASCAR. Even in the whole next gen era, just not a lot of people are watching. And granted, I know there's a Monday date here or there and there, but it doesn't perform well. And it's such a historic facility, and it makes you sad to see it not perform that well because it's exciting. The drivers like it. There's a lot of skill that goes into it. The Monster Mile is just Miles. My cat's name is also Miles, funny enough. Different spelling, obviously. Not going to go into that. Nobody cares. But in this track in general, I wish it did. I just wish it was did better, honestly. And it hasn't. And maybe because now it's owned, and maybe we do a trade. So let's see if it would suck to see Dover off the schedule. I think you should keep it with Xfinity, keep it with truck. Well, they don't race trucks there. It's COVID, obviously. ARCA, but maybe have this be one of the weeks for the Cup, get a week off and just not come here. But we'll see. Knowing this, I say this now. It's going to be the best Dover race we've seen in decades, probably, come Sunday or Monday. But yeah, Dover's really just not the track for me. I really can't explain a lot about it. It's just, I don't think it performs it doesn't give a lot of memorable performances besides when he used to be dominated, obviously, by like Jimmy Johnson and them. It's just, I don't know, guys. I want to say this, though, before Tanner answers. I really wish this was a race where Tricon Garage had a Joe Gibbs Technical Alliance and put Martin Truex back out there, because I kind of miss Martin Truex in the sense where he was going to do a couple races here, Xfinity there, maybe a truck race, and he hasn't done a damn thing except probably fish, which he's earned it. Obviously, he's going to be Hall of Famer. He's earned it, and obviously the Daytona 500 went terrible for him. So Martin Truex always got respect for him. One of the best to ever do it. So I miss him. Maybe that's why I'm not a fan of Dover. Is we don't have Martin Truex Jr. there. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. Viewership too, whether it's rain, it just has consistently underperformed in my opinion versus every other track on the schedule. So I guess we're gonna see what happens.
I'm going to go ahead and start my answer by saying I don't give a damn about viewership numbers when it comes to how good or bad a racetrack is. That's the fans' fault if they can't find, enjoyment in a racetrack. But to Matthew's point, though, about the next-gen era and how it's affected racing at Dover, it's really weird. Like, before we moved to the next gen car, I felt that the 2021 race with, low downforce and the Hendrick cars went 1, 2, 3, 4. That was one of the first races I saw there where the bottom was pretty much the only line you could run and you couldn't really pass. If I recall correctly, I feel like that race had less than 1,000 green flag passes, even though we had, again, the Gen 6 low downforce package, which had higher horsepower, lower downforce, promoted passing at a lot of tracks similar to it. So it is kind of a shock that since the next gen has kind of been incorporated back in 2022, we've kind of been seeing more of the same. I felt that in the mid Gen 6 era where, you throw it back to that 2016 race that I feel is like an absolute classic, where Kyle Larson was doing everything that he could to get his very first Cup Series win, including maybe getting into the back of Carl Edwards coming out of turn 2 while they were both on the front row for a restart. And then Larson had to contend for the final 40 laps with Matt Kenseth, the champion of the sport. And Chase Elliott also was in that duel as well, riding the very high line, which we don't really see nowadays for whatever reason. And it's really a shame because I think that right now should be Dover's prime, right? Like, we're talking about a track that has 30-year-old pavement, like literally hasn't been paved since 1995. Has old pavement, should be an extremely aggressive track surface for both tires and just equipment in general, especially with how the next gen car likes to ride low in the back. You would think that those factors combined would allow for more travel in the car and ultimately drivers making a little bit more mistakes while they're racing on the track. But for whatever reason in the next gen era, it hasn't really been able to do that. It hasn't allowed drivers to like spread out closer to the wall and, run all 3 grooves around the track. It's kind of become bottom dominant like it has been over the last 4 years. Now, I am a little bit more interested in this year's race, assuming it doesn't rain and it's not marred by like a bunch of cloud cover that, could adversely affect the racing product. But it's been kind of like at the beginning of May for like the past few years, which I think is a horrible date for this track. I don't think it's warm enough in Delaware at that time of year for the race to really have the struggling to find grip element that makes Dover races so good. So I think that moving it into July is a great step in the positive direction. But all in all, I think that if we're talking about the overall NASCAR schedule and like where does Dover stack up, it definitely isn't in the most advantageous market. I would say that somebody quote me on this. How many different Cup Series tracks are there? I want to say it's 28 or 29 now, but I'm not particularly certain on that. But regardless, I would say it's somewhere in the mid-tier. I think the track itself is good. It's just that circumstances and the next-gen car in general have kind of painted a poor picture of what the track is capable of. Because if you go back and look at the Gen 6 races there from, I would say, 2016 onward, you see a lot of really solid races up until that 2021 spring race that, again, didn't really have a whole lot of passing or even a whole lot of movement up front. But I would say Dover's probably firmly in 15th or so. I think that it puts on a really good race. It's a unique racetrack that we don't really have on the NASCAR calendar. It's one of 3 single-mile tracks with Dover and New Hampshire, and even New Hampshire is starting to finally get some attention again by getting a playoff race this year, which I'm really enthused about. I feel like that track has really spread out a whole lot in the next-gen era. But, yeah, I think that if we can get a Dover race that doesn't have all of the weather hang-ups, doesn't have, a tremendously green racetrack for them to drive on. I hope it's a little bit rubbered in so you see drivers start to actually spread the groove out a little bit in the turns. I think that we would see a really good Dover race, but circumstances and where it's been on the schedule, I feel like have been holding it back. And hopefully this will be a step in the right direction. But with rain in the forecast that washed out qualifying today and is threatening to delay the Xfinity race as well, it definitely gives you some cause to pause.
Scheduling is so key. I remember thinking then long ago that Rockingham, North Carolina in February and November annually was not exactly a good date for them. Chillier, weather-wise. Saw some good racing, but fan attendance not there. Dover, I mean, in the heyday, packed full, massive crowds. The timing, I just don't know. And down to one race, it'll be interesting to see what SMI is thinking. I would love to see Dover get a different date. I mean, for me, when it was in the first round of the playoffs, a cutoff race, I felt that was a good spot because it was the Monster Mile. You had to be good at that track. But we'll see what NASCAR SMI all have planned. Of course, 2026 schedule. A lot of rumors around that. That's going to be coming in pieces by piece, it seems like, with rumors of San Diego on the track. Coda seems to be on there. So we'll be following all the news right here on the Grid Network. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so don't miss any of our coverage. Let's switch over to IndyCar. They wrapped up qualifying while we were on the air. 5 races remaining in the IndyCar season. Alex Palou, 7 wins. Could potentially hit 10 wins this season. He has 1 at Laguna Seca. He has 1 at Portland. That will put him at 9. But then he has not won the Milwaukee Mile or Nashville Super Speedway, but he already has 2 oval wins this year. Iowa, small oval, and of course the Indianapolis 500. His best finish in Toronto, 2nd place. Last year he was 4th place, and he is starting on the outside of row 1 with the pole sitter Colton Herta in front of him, another Honda driver. Matt, do you believe Alex Palou could achieve 10 wins, tie AJ Foyt in 1964 and Al Unser in 1970 with 10 wins each?
I guess what I'm learning quickly about Alex Palou is you don't doubt him. That's, I think, really ultimately my answer is I don't care where Alex Palou starts. I think he's going to be my favorite at the 99% of the tracks they run at. So even if I don't think he can do it, part of me from, I guess, a fan perspective too, is you kind of want him to do it because I feel like I feel like the competition's a lot closer. And now, especially with like modern day motorsports. And I just think if he was able to put belt to butt that many times in the same season, it reminds you a lot of whether it was Verstappen a couple of years ago, whether it was SVG and supercars a couple of years ago. You can even say Brock Feeney now in supercars. Just these guys are putting on absolute clinics in the 21st century and specifically this past decade since 2020. So, yeah, I think he can easily do it. And for him to not have a win here yet is kind of crazy, but he also never had won the Indianapolis 500, never had won on an oval. Then boom, goes at Milwaukee, wins the most important race in motorsport. And so no offense to NASCAR fans, but I think the Indy 500 is in a league of its own. And for Palou to come out there and do that, it's like crazy. So, yeah, the names, Foyt and Unser, with IndyCar in general, to put Palou's already putting himself in the conversation. And he's still young. He doesn't have a lot of starts really under his belt, but he's slowly he's reminding me of Corey Heim in the Truck Series. I think that's specifically in the sense where it's like, if he manages to stay here, he's going to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest ever do it in that specific series. But, he's so damn good that they want to take him to other series, whether it's Formula One, stuff like that. So check out our predictions for Cadillac, by the way, on social media, who's going to be in those seats. But Palou's just truly been the best driver in the world lately. And I think if he doesn't win the 2026 ESPY for best driver of the world, we got a riot because there's no way in hell he doesn't win that award. He's just been dominant. Nobody's really been that great in the IndyCar in quite a little bit. I mean, Scott Dixon over time has been, granted, yeah, but Palou just this season's been belt to butt, like I always say, just kicking everyone's butt. And even when he has a bad race, he still has the best race for 20 of the other guys on the grid. You know what I mean? So I think he can easily win this race. It's not going to be easy, though. Hurt has 1 year before. I think Hurt is due for a win as well. So we're going to see what happens. But I think if you're a NASCAR fan and you're still tuned in right now live, I'd turn on the IndyCar race too. I think Toronto is a great course. I think NASCAR should go to Toronto if they do another street course. Then SVG become the first driver to win in 3 different nations for NASCAR. That's probably what would happen. He would win in Mexico, he would win in the USA, and then obviously Canada. But yeah, that's my long thought. I think he can do it, and I think the fan in me kind of wants to see it happen, you know?
Yeah. As far as Alex Palou is concerned, I think 10 wins is definitely on the table. But honestly, in this era of IndyCar, I think that winning half of the calendar, which is 9 races, is almost even more impressive. Granted, I know that 10, is a whole other win on top of that. So that is, in theory, more impressive. But I just think even getting to 9 would be like a profound achievement. I think that, if I can't have a championship battle where there's like multiple players, even, just 2 that are duking it out for the title, it would be really nice to, just have someone put on a historic torrential clinic like Alex Palou's been doing this year that we just can't have in NASCAR anymore due to how the playoff format is structured. I think that NASCAR and IndyCar are kind of having like polar opposite seasons in that way as well. So like in IndyCar, Alex Palou is putting on a singular clinic unlike anything we've really seen in the last 25 to 30 years, even the last 35 to 50 years. But in NASCAR, I feel like we are 20 races in and we don't have any idea who like the clear favorite for the title is, because there just isn't one. Like, you have 4 different drivers with 3 wins apiece that I could, it's really a toss-up if they're going to be good every week. And then you have one guy with 1 win who has speed everywhere but can't find victory lane more often. So, you kind of have like 5 people in the mix really for the title over there. And then you come over to IndyCar and it's like maybe in an outside world where Alex Palou kind of starts and parks the next 5 races, maybe Pato Award will have an inkling of a chance by the time we get to Nashville. But all that said, I think Alex Palou has put on an absolute historic clinic this year. Nothing like we've seen before in this era of IndyCar. And it's really special. And I, for one, would not mind seeing him put himself in the same company as the Foyts and the Unsers of the world. I think it is important to note that in the 64 season that is referenced here with AJ Foyt, he won 10 of the 13 events, including the Indianapolis 500. In Unser's 1970 season, he won 10 races, including the Indy 500, and it was out of 18 races. So technically, if Palou can get 10 and 17, it's more impressive than Unser's, but on paper, a little bit less impressive than Foyt's.
Yeah, and we got to remember, too, Mid-Ohio could have easily been, sounds like heavy rain again, Canner.
Yeah, like it seems like they just keep flipping the rain switch on and then off. Like, it was great for 40 minutes, nothing was happening, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, everything starts coming down outside. Sorry about that. It's just
all good.
Distraction.
One of those deals with the weather. But yeah, we haven't had really much of a weather race this year in IndyCar, thinking about it. But it's just crazy to think Palou, had he not messed up a Mid-Ohio, a mistake he made, he'll be up to 8 race wins. His only finish outside the top 10 was Detroit when he got bunted by David Malukas. He is on a historic run like we haven't seen before. And with Toronto, I mean, he got the position, and then it would be crazy if he could somehow, if he gets Toronto, there's a chance he could win 4 consecutive races with Laguna Seca and Portland afterwards. And then by then, Portland, the championship will most likely be decided. So it's going to be very interesting. Of course, we'll be at Portland later this year for the IndyCar Series. And it's been once in the last 20 years the IndyCar Series championship came down to, was resolved one race before the end, Portland a few years ago. I can't even think the last time it was claimed 2 races before the end of the season. That would be something you got to look way back in the history to find that. The top 6 in qualifying that made to the Firestone Fast 6 were Kyle Kirk, Will Power, Ray Hall, Alex Palou, and Marcus Armstrong in that order from fastest to slowest. As we mentioned, we saw Colton Herta get the pole, so he made it. He's on the front row with Alex Palou. Armstrong, Power, they made it to row 2, and the third row, Graham Rahal, Kyle Kirkwood. So you have all Hondas except one Chevrolet, and Reddy, the only other team besides Chip Ganassi Racing to have more than one win. Overall, Tanner, Colton Herta, we know he's good at street cars, but he seems to be prone to making mistakes. While Kyle Kirkwood, he has 2 wins, or is it 3 wins this year?
It's 3 now.
3 wins in this year's race. So Kirkwood easily could get a chance at getting a win. I mean, he got the win at Long Beach, he got the win at Detroit, and Gateway, Noble. So do you think either one of those two could hold off Palou from second place?
I think Kirkwood has the best shot. I just don't buy anything into what the 26 team is doing. If they're not wrecking because of driver error, they are getting slotted behind because of pit road miscues that no other team experiences on the grid. So I just don't think it's the 26 team's year to go out and perform for whatever reason. But I think that Kirkwood has shown he is more than capable of, fighting Alex Palou one-on-one and winning. He did this at Long Beach earlier this year. I think that Kirkwood has an extreme grip on street course racing for whatever reason. And I think that, coming into an exhibition place, I feel like he should be the one that is going to contest Palou the most. But I believe Herta won here last year, if I'm not mistaken. And I do think that if they're going to contend at one track this year that isn't Nashville, this will probably be the one that he does it at. But at the end of the day, I just don't have any faith in that 26 team, whether it be the driver or the pit crew, to get the job done against Alex Palou, who has made exactly 2 mistakes all season. The first one being in front of David Malukas on a restart in Detroit, and then the second one when he was leading at Mid-Ohio, where he just pushed off the course. As for Herta's most recent victory, that was Nashville in the season finale last year. But yeah, I think that all in all, Kirkwood has the best shot, but given that Herta won here last year in one of the first hybrid races, I do think that he should have a solid shot if he and his team can kind of keep all the wheels on, both literally and metaphorically.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's more, can Herta and Kirkwood do it? Yeah, but will they? I don't know. I think this does give the best chance, and I think it's surprising to me that Kirkwood's been so good this season. Yeah, he's 4th in the standings. That just shows how good, even though Pado's not finding victory lane as much, not as Scott Dixon, obviously, because Palou's winning literally everything else. He's been right up there with them. He's in 4th, but Herta seems to have taken a step back, I feel like, than what we've seen he was capable of. And I know that's why we addressed the rumors of if he would take a chance to go over to Formula One. He's got to do it now because he's going to eventually not qualify with the super license, I don't believe, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see. I think if he continues to not have a great year and he gets an opportunity with a Cadillac or with maybe Alpine, someone and so forth, I think then he takes that shot. But Kirkwood, I think I've been talking about Herta. I think Herta definitely has a shot to get it done. I really do. But it's really hard to bet against the other 2 guys. I think Kirkwood's got a real shot. It's impossible really to bet against Palou. I noticed Scott Dixon isn't in the top 6. Scott Dixon does really well here, and it wouldn't shock me if he earned win number 2 for the season. And because his chase to being arguably the greatest ever do it in this series as well. That's another exciting thing to watch. But yeah, Can they hold him off? Can Kirkwood and Herta hold off Palou? Yes. Will they? I don't think so. So we'll see what happens.
It'll be interesting to see because all those Hondas could potentially win. Can't count on Scott Dixon. I mean, we've seen him come from the back towards the front, and this race, its primary sponsor is Honda, the Honda Grand Prix of Ontario. And like I mentioned, the top six, there was only one Chevrolet there, Will Power. You have to look back, Paddle War on row 5. Then the next Chevrolet followed him, Callum Isla, the teammate of Paddle War, Nolan Siegel. And then you got to look at row 7 on the outside, Scott McLaughlin, Newgarden in row 9, not having that great of a year at all. And we have, as I mentioned, 5 races remaining. 2 of them are ovals. The other 2 tracks, well, Axpo has one on. And the record for the Chevrolet teams are not exactly favorable. Now, granted, Will Power has won in Portland, including last year, and Scott McLaughlin won in the Milwaukee Mile last year. Let's not forget, also, Paddle War won in the Milwaukee Mile. It was a doubleheader. When you look at the race of Toronto, Laguna Seca, Portland, Hondas, and particularly Palou are strong there. So that leaves essentially the 2 ovals. So I have to ask him, Matt, what do you think is the likelihood of 1, 2, or all 3 Penske drivers going winless in 2025?
It's tough because you feel like Penske should already have wins this year, and they've had opportunities, and every time the opportunity presents itself, I think either with Joseph Newgarden getting kind of screwed multiple times, for lack of a better term, at the Oval with Milwaukee, I think it was. So it's, I don't know. Scott McLaughlin's one of the best race car drivers in the world, too. And I'm surprised he still hasn't won yet. And Will Power has been quietly the best Penske guy this season in terms of just getting points. So I think I mentioned on the last show, if Newgarden went away and didn't win any of that doubleheader weekend, they should be hitting the panic button over there. And I think they're smashing the panic button because there's really no excuse besides Alex Palou's dominance that this team doesn't have even one victory. And they have very little podiums as well. So do I think they're going to win? I think it's going to be one of those things like last week or a couple weeks ago, where if Palou makes the mistake, then yes. But until then, you can't convince me that they're going to win. I think with the ovals, obviously, they have a real shot. They really do. But even at this track, too, Will Power's won here a couple times, and I think Scott McLaughlin's more than capable of winning. And Joseph Newgarden's won here as well multiple times. So it's like, do I think it's going to happen? It's like, yeah, I think they will. But is it going to be at this track in Toronto? No, I don't think so. I think it's going to end up being an oval or some magical upset that Palou makes a very, very rare mistake.
I think the likelihood of all 3 of them winning is hovering around 10 to 15%. I think that all 3 of them have the capability of winning an oval race, even with the hybrid component on the car. Obviously, McLaughlin and Power both did that at Iowa last year, I believe. And then McLaughlin also ended up winning at Milwaukee in closer to the fall. So, yeah, I think the one big question mark is, like, can Joseph Newgarden win? And I think that Newgarden will win the season finale at Nashville. Obviously, that's 2 months away. Well, I guess it's closer to a month and a half now, but time's moving by very quickly, folks. I think that Newgarden in his hometown area, being able to, go to an oval with a very old, aggressive track surface, I think that all leans into what he does very well. I believe he ended up top 5 last year, if I'm not mistaken, in that one race. And I think that with a year of having the hybrid component under his belt, and, it seems like outside of this week, the Chevys in general have been getting better and better and better. I think that he'll have a really good shot to win there, or Milwaukee towards the end of the year. While I think that Power and McLaughlin have a better chance to win at any of the next 5 races, I think that Newgarden probably wins the very last one. And if not him, then it could be McLaughlin or Power. That said, I think that at least one of them probably goes winless. And if I had to put my money on any of the 3, it would be Power. That's not a knock at him at all. It's just that he has been so consistent in that he'll inevitably finish somewhere between 8th and 4th most weeks, assuming he doesn't have some sort of a failure on his car like he has at most of the ovals this year. So, yeah, I think that if I had to put my money on it, at least one of them is going to win. I think that's a 100% certainty. I think it's a 10 to 15% certainty that all 3 of them somehow manage to get a W before the season's out. But I think the most likely is that 1 or 2 of them is going to end up winless. And if I had to put my money on it, Will Power is probably the odd man out. And then probably Newgarden after that. McLaughlin's fast pretty much anywhere you put him. And I think that ultimately he could go out there and have a sterling performance at any of these next 5 races and come out with a victory if all of the cards play his way. But I would say in the next 5 events, the best chance that Penske probably has to put somebody in victory lane is Newgarden at either of the ovals. He has been extremely wickedly fast at all of the ovals this year. I think it got lost completely in the shuffle of Andretti getting disqualified and Palou winning the Indy 500 that Newgarden made his way up from 32nd, the very last row on the grid for the Indy 500, all the way to 5th before his fueling issue came about in the later stages of that race, and it probably would have been a pretty interesting ending to that event had we gotten to see it actually play out with Newgarden still involved in the finish. But you look at Gateway, he was leading there. He led most of the laps at both the Iowa races and just kind of got caught out twice, especially in the second race, by Andretti cars just completely lacking competence and setup. So, yeah, I think that Penske's got a really good shot to still win a race this year, but I think it'll probably come in on oval, and somebody's going to be the odd man out without a win.
I think there will be someone without a win. I mean, after what we saw happen on Iowa, I mean, Newgarden was a winning contender. Milwaukee Mile, a lot could happen. And then Nashville, we saw Colton Herta get the win there. It's going to be a tough road for all Penske drivers to earn a win this year and be something else. I would be just floored if they go completely winless. I think that would be something none of us expected. Speaking about wins, let's get to it. Pick a winner. Encourage everyone watching, comment. Who do you think is going to win? NASCAR, IndyCar, and let's throw in MotoGP. We'll start off all 3 races. Plenty of time to get on the leaderboard. Second page, plenty of spots. We're getting down to it. Less than 100 races this year across the grid ranking. So we encourage everyone to comment with who you think is going to win each race. We'll start off with the NASCAR Cup Series at the Monster Mile, Dover. Tanner, who do you see winning the race?
Just making sure I look at the lineup here. Yes, I think I have my answer. The driver starting in spot lucky number 13, I believe Denny Hamlin will parlay all of this off-track adversity into energy that fuels him to a victory. He's been showing a surprising amount of pace at road courses recently, which shows me the signs of an extremely confident driver with an even more confident race team behind him. I think that Denny Hamlin finally puts his best foot forward as the preeminent favorite to win this title this year by winning his 4th race of the year at Dover Motor Speedway, formerly known as Dover Downs.
Yeah, all facts, no printer on that one. I think I would say I would probably I'll make my official pick, but I think for now I got to agree with Tanner. I think Denny Hamlin, especially with everything going on, I think it'd kind of be funny to watch him do it too, just because of the whole stuff going on. It's like, you take away my team's starters, I'm gonna just keep winning and have the most wins in the season so far. So yeah, I'm gonna go tentatively with Denny Hamlin. I just gotta pass Kobe. I choked Atlanta by erasing Elliott and putting a Logano in, and now Kobe's ahead of me. So I gotta make up for that. So hopefully Denny can bring me to the promised land.
I'm going to go with the Toyota driver as well, but I'm going to go with Christopher Bell. I think he's going to reclaim the win. I think he's overdue just to try to get some more momentum for the remainder of the regular season. Bringing the pressure to SVG as well, too. NTT IndyCar Series in Toronto, as I mentioned, you got 5 Hondas in the top 6 with Herta, Palou in the front row. Tanner, who do you think is going to win the Indy Honda of Ontario?
He may not be on the pole, but I think that no matter what, you go into any race weekend, and it's almost always the assumption that as soon as that 10 car takes the lead, it's pullover. So I'm taking Alex Palou this weekend, but don't be surprised if Kyle Kirkwood gives him a run for his money.
Yeah, on my end too, I want to apologize. I accidentally said Milwaukee, but I was talking about Iowa. This guy happened to win one of those races as well. I'm going to continue to stay on the Tanner train here. I think it'll be pullover as well, unless Kirkwood or even Herta if they have a competent day. But until then, I got to go with Palou.
I have to agree. It's hard to go with somebody that has 7 wins, could have easily been 8. And if he had gotten that middle highway, we'd be talking about 3 consecutive weekends where he's trying to go for a win. Not just phenomenal. Alex Palou, and I think if Alex Palou doesn't win, it might be, okay, he's point racing to claim another championship. Let's go to another series where we have a rider that I think everyone's going to go with because he won the sprint race. MotoGP. With the Grand Prix now decided, coming up, the sprint race, Marquez got to win. Tanner, who are you going with for the Grand Prix race?
I am going with the man on the bottom left of our screen, or I guess if you're looking at it from our perspective, I guess it'd be bottom right. But I'm going with Marc Marquez, obviously.
Yeah, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Unless he starts last and is actually scratch that. Unless he's not in the race, I'm not gonna not pick Marc Marquez. He's having one of those years, man.
It's a Marc Marquez world, and we're just all living in it. He is gonna, I think, claim this after claiming the sprint. Adam, for pick winner, Marc Marquez. He's going with Kyle Kirkwood, and then Dover, Kyle Larson, a little bit of a different pick. And then we also have in the comment, I assume it means, yes, more circuits, please. NASCAR street circuits are unbelievable. Thank you so much, Mr. Russell. We encourage you to subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss our wrap-up show tomorrow, approximately 90 minutes following the conclusion of the NASCAR Cup Series at Dover. We'll be on the air to recap NASCAR, IndyCar, plus MotoGP, World Rally Championship. We're seeing a big weekend from Oliver Solberg over there. Can he come away with his first World Rally Championship win in dramatic fashion? That'll be huge. And, of course, grid ranking will be updated. So be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs. Monday grid encore, Wednesday grid tonight. We'll be trying to have women in motorsports on the air. Then we'll do it all over again next race weekend as we're coming up to the Brickyard 400. With that said, for Tanner and Matt, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races.